Welcome to the Ending Sexploitation podcast, where we decode sexual harm and provide you with active solutions. I'm your host, Ghislaine McNamara. All right, well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Ending Sexploitation podcast. This week, I'm joined by the incredible Teresa Helm, Survivor Services Coordinator at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, incredible advocate, expert, my colleague. And you've all heard from her previously on another episode about the commercial sex trade and impact on the LGBTQ plus community. So I recommend you go back and listen to that. But Teresa, thank you so much for joining us again.
Hi, good afternoon, Haley. Thank you for having me here.
Well, it's great because I saw you in DC. Actually, you didn't see me. I wasn't able to fight through the crowds, but I got to see you because you were just in DC here yesterday. We're talking today about the latest on the Epstein and Maxwell sex trafficking case developments and to report on that rally and press conference that took place yesterday that you came into. So, to start us off, this survivor press conference and rally, I mean, it's making international news. Probably a lot of people have seen the headline or scrolled past a tweet about it. But to start us off, Teresa, can you explain kind of what that rally and press conference were, major themes discussed, and what the goals were?
Yes, certainly. So, what they were was a very specific call to action. And what that action, the action that we as Epstein and Maxwell survivors and other survivors as well, what we are calling for is the ongoing pursuit of justice, because we seem to have come to a bit of a standstill for quite a while now. And I think that's actually putting it quite lightly. There is a ton of information that is really pertinent to the process of ongoing, which if this information were to be released, as everyone is saying, release the files. If the Department of Justice would release these files, then the names would be brought to light. Then the pursuit of who do we need to investigate, what entities do we need to investigate, then that would all be very clear, and it wouldn't be such a big mystery, to understand the pathway that needs to be taken to hold others accountable. So the call to action is to release the files so that further investigation can take place, to stand and support survivors throughout the process, and to elevate voices of survivors, which is something that unfortunately happens quite often, where survivors are frequently silenced or just kind of glossed over. And that goes so much out, far beyond Epstein and Maxwell survivors. That tends to go across the board with survivors in general. And I think that one of the most important things there is one of the lessons in that is, I think this is a common theme in our space and movement, that this really does kind of inhibit other survivors from coming forward when they see the backlash or the threats, or backlash could include threats, or just we are simply not listening to you, trying to silence attempt. And that really does prevent others from coming forward, which is really tragic, considering the widespread abuse, really across the world. So that's what we were all there for, was to urge the release of the files so that we can continue down the road. And as I said, there are a lot of questions I heard, and I've read a few today. People want to ask the questions, well, if these survivors have all the names, why aren't they saying the names? And, there's a couple key points to that. There would be, threats of defamation lawsuits. There's fear of safety,
Yeah.
100% of that. And, a lot of the information is under protective order, bank secrecy laws. Our attorneys have all the information, all of it, all the
Mhm.
files. So they know exactly what needs to be released. They just are under protective order and cannot
Wow.
speak about that released,
Yeah.
which is pretty significant to think
It
about.
is
Yeah.
so significant because I think that piece gets lost. I mean, there's so many things that came out of that rally. Obviously, you, Teresa, spoke and you did an incredible job speaking, I just have to say. I'm sure there's clips and recording of your presentation, and we'll try to find them and share them because everything that you shared was so important. And it was just also so incredible to see the number of survivors who came. And I think one person even said, we're more than headlines, we're real people. And someone said something to the effect of, ask us, we know the names. And it just makes me think with so much of this case, things have been kind of turned into slogans where people will say, release the files. Well, the files don't exist, or the client list doesn't exist. But
Mm-hmm.
what we're really asking for is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but to investigate, to put more resources into this, because the
Yeah.
survivors know some names. And that's a very reasonable lead to put resources and investigation into. And it just doesn't seem like that's happened in a very coordinated way.
No, it hasn't. And, I for every single one of us there over the last few days, we all have that lived experience of what we went through. So
Mhm.
anyone trying to say anything other than, that things aren't legitimate, things are a hoax, things didn't happen, it's it's mind blowing to consider how we're all there not feeling in super comfortable zones, being there, doing that, speaking about the parts of ourselves that, you know, it's such a sensitive topic, obviously. It's
Yeah.
so very, very deeply personal. Um, so for all of us standing there together and all the survivors as a whole, again, as I said, I definitely include all the other survivors that were there that may not necessarily be a part of this case. Um, we're there because we've gone through something and we are speaking up, speaking out, and trying to prevent others from going through the same. So, we're not there for any other reason other than because it's our true personal lived experience.
Yeah. And it is just such a case of the survivors are there and standing up, and it's time for people
Hmm.
to listen and to prioritize
Yeah.
what the survivors are calling for. And that was
Hmm.
also the impression that I got from watching the rally, was that there was so much unity, solidarity and support for each other. I mean, also the crowd was huge, had to be moved
Yeah.
around multiple times by the Capitol Hill police, I think, who were a bit nervous at how big the crowd was. There's so much
Mhm.
support there for the survivors, and there was just such unity in calling for more transparency, more accountability. And something else that was mentioned a couple times was the need for Ghislaine Maxwell to continue to be held accountable and to not be
Mhm.
given any kind of pardon. Teresa, for those, many people are following this or they've followed it on and off this case. What has been kind of the latest with the Maxwell news? There's been a lot going on with her.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, so when I think about the news of Ghislaine Maxwell, the interview that she had with Blanche and the moving prisons afterwards, going from a maximum security prison to a minimum security prison that's more or less, so I've heard and read, it's more like a camp, so to
Mhm.
speak. I don't know any other sexual predator person that's been um, found guilty of sex crimes that are in a minimum security prison. Uh,
Yeah.
so backing up to the interview, not one of us were consulted prior to the interview happening. Not one of us were there, or like I said, consulted prior to where we could have given good questions to ask.
Mm.
Uh, for him
Oh,
to
that would have
push
been
back,
interesting. Yeah.
right, for him to push back on, because when I heard that recording, just in the clips that I heard her lie more than once.
Mhm.
So for him to have gone there without consulting a survivor, without asking any good questions, with no real factual, solid information, to be able to push back on her to the point where he's actually even providing the proper term for her to use, the term consent. You know,
Yeah.
he put the words in her mouth for her. He gave her he finished her sentence, because
Yeah,
she
what was
was
it?
having a,
She said something she was saying something like, "Oh, I never saw anyone look upset. I never saw anyone who," and he was
yeah,
like, "didn't consent." It was something like that where he finished her
yes.
sentence. Yeah.
Yes, and it's just disgusting. And
Mhm.
uh, she also, you just reminded me as well when she said, everyone would just come back with a smile on their face or something. All she did was sit there and basically say that everyone was enjoying themselves and this is all basically just a big fiasco. That's basically when it comes down to what she was saying by, oh, I never saw anybody but coming out with smiles on their faces.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking personally, well, actually, you never saw me because I was at his house and I had been at your home earlier. So you never saw me run out of his house. You didn't see
Mhm.
me stare at the sidewalk cracks so I could focus on something as I was walking back to, the apartment building that I was staying in after I left his home. Because that's all I did. I just looked at the lines and the concrete slats, just focusing on those so that I could just focus on something. So
Mhm.
we weren't smiling and happy. It's so gross,
Mhm.
that conversation that I heard. I mean, it was
Yeah.
so infuriating for me to listen to that. So then, as I was saying, and then we all learned from the media that she had been moved to that prison. No one was consulted before that either. No one knew, not even our attorneys knew that she was being moved, before she was moved. So the whole thing is raises way more questions than any answers could possibly provided. It doesn't make sense. The only thing that the only sense that I feel I and others can make of it at this point, um, is that she's clearly being given privilege for what? What do they feel that they have gotten from her to
Mm.
to earn, so to speak, this privilege that she's been given to move and to even speak before we all had the chance to speak on, publicly, like the last few days. I mean, I realize we've been speaking publicly, but I mean in that same type of parallel platform that she had been given.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, because since the Department of Justice interviewed
Mm.
her and then published it, it did create kind of a platform for what she was saying because obviously that became huge news. And maybe I just haven't ever seen it, but I've never heard of the Department of Justice interviewing survivors and releasing those tapes. And it's very interesting. At the very beginning of their interview with Maxwell, they warned her, it is illegal for you to lie to us. It's a crime for you to lie to us in this. And then she said so many things, like you said, that were lies that were contradicted from things that she was convicted of. She was convicted not only based on survivor testimony, but corroborating evidence, corroborating testimony from other people who were around who confirmed that she was engaged in these sex crimes. And also she was charged with perjury for lying under oath at one point. So she's not someone whose word you trust. And it's just so
Yeah.
wild. I think it's almost too like a false transparency of saying, well, we're going to interview her and then release it. But they just let her lie the whole time. So I don't know, it's
Yes.
just very
Yes.
frustrating.
Incredibly. And that was actually a point that my attorney pointed out in that closed session that we had with the House Oversight Committee. That was one of the first points that my attorney raised, was that she was given that warning of, that further prosecution could take place if she were to lie. And then she just sat there and lied. And again, I cannot stress enough what it was like to sit there and listen to there being zero pushback on anything she was
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
That's a different layer to it, I think.
Yes. Yeah. The impact and the silencing effect that it can have on survivors. I think it's just so clear that this rally and press conference in so many ways, I don't want to say we're a response to, but it's like, okay, we need to create our own platform then for survivor voices to be heard if kind of the system isn't going to. And
Yeah.
it was a closed door session with the House Oversight Committee. Is there anything that you can share with us, kind of broad strokes, about how that went or basic concerns that were raised there?
Well, I will say, so the end theme to the meeting was that there will be further action taken to aim to get the files released. And we were asked to hold them accountable, to not stop, and because, and keep pushing
Mm,
until the process continues. There was some pushback from one side, asking us not to get our hopes up. Um, that was the main theme, was that they want to further investigate. There was information given. They definitely did seem to not really understand what was so important about releasing all of the files. And it was very clear from attorneys to state yet again, everything's in there.
yeah,
Everything that you could, all your questions you're sitting here wondering about is all in there. And
yeah,
like I said earlier, they all know the files. They've seen it, read it. I mean, they have been litigating it for 20 years or plus, so they know all the important information is in those files.
oh, that just
So
has to be
that
so infuriating. It has to be so infuriating to know and to have the documents, not be able to share them, and then to be told,
yes.
well, keep pushing us, keep
Yes.
advocating for us to do
Yeah.
the right thing. That's so hard.
Yeah. So we shall see. I
Mhm,
I tend to hold on to a whole lot of hope on a lot of things.
mhm.
And maybe I need some lessons in life yet. I don't know. But
Good to hold on to hope.
I do hold on to hope. So that's where I'm
And
at
this
still.
week was so incredible. This week was so incredible. The response to the rally and to the press conference again was huge. Huge
Yeah.
international news. And you yourself personally have just been doing a lot of media recently. If people
Yeah.
listening were able to see our internal, we have a little internal place where we put press hits and it's just Teresa's name every single day. As you're doing this media, what do you wish how do you feel the media is covering this issue? What do you wish reporters were asking about, or do you think the press is overlooking or telling the story wrong? How do you feel about the media and their coverage of all this?
Uh, you know, there's a theme that continues to really pop up for me. And it is frustrating because, and I'm not going for one's left or right. What
Mm,
the media is doing is making it very political from weeks ago when more media began to increase, I do feel like it's very political warfare even. And that's,
Mm.
it really drowns out, to me, it feels as though it drowns out what really matters throughout this, and that is the actual women, now women, some, children when this happened to them, the people that are involved personally that have been harmed. It tends to really overshadow the political left versus right, tends to overshadow, and everyone's raising political points nonstop. And that's a
Yeah.
real big frustration ongoing for me. I'm not sure others feel that same way, but I could bet that many do. So that's an unfortunate theme to this, because
Mhm.
as I speak, I try to speak very down the middle, um, because it's not about politics. It really, truly
Yeah.
isn't. Right. So, and one thing about media, is there are uh, there are instances and details that tend to get distorted a bit or shifted, changed a bit. Facts, facts from stories, facts that story, from stories that whether it's myself or others share about experiences. And sometimes I think whether it's just the person interpreting the information, or if they're trying to kind of support their own personal news broadcaster viewpoint, but things sometimes get shifted. So those are frustrations that can pop
Mhm.
up throughout all of this, because there is such high media coverage. It's so high profile. And then when you add that into something that's so personal, whether it's
Yeah.
a big fact or a smaller fact, you tend to feel it's very personal when someone gets something inaccurate.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. And I think so many journalists, I'm sure even unintentionally, but it's easy to focus on something sensational and not focus on kind of the call to action, on the deeper commentary being made, and to pull out, a quote or focus on a part of the story that you wish that they wouldn't. And I'm sure so many people feel that way. And the hyper partisanship is always so concerning, because it just should not be a partisan issue, and
No.
it just should not be. It's about justice for the survivors and having our justice system prove crimes. Everyone should have their day in court and
Mhm.
have resources to defend or to prosecute the cases that have good evidence, but you have to
Right.
go through that process.
Exactly. Right. We have those processes for, there's a purpose, there's an intent, you know, there's supposed to be of
Yeah.
why we even have those processes. Our law, our country's built on these processes. And when we are not following them to cater to power or wealth or both,
Mm.
um, it's beyond disheartening. I have mentioned before, to your point a few moments ago about us having to almost create our own platform,
Mm.
that's the thing, is if you're not going to follow the process, you force us out there almost to
Yeah.
elevate, rise up bigger, louder. Uh, it's interesting how people think that they can try to get us to go away when really it just encourages us to get louder. So it's kind of counterproductive if they would just follow the process to begin with.
Yeah, have transparency, do the accountability process, and then this problem will be solved. Yeah, it becomes
Yeah,
bigger and bigger the more that they try to avoid that.
it
One
really
thing that
does.
I'm really glad for is that at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, I think today, the day that we're releasing this, we are endorsing the House resolution that is moving forward to release the Epstein files. that is kind of a discharge petition that's seeking to force a vote to release the files. It already has more than 200 lawmakers signed on to it. And it's essentially kind of just a culmination of what all we've been talking about, just saying that transparency is essential and that sex trafficking thrives when there's secrecy and when facilitators or fellow abusers are covered up. So I don't know, Teresa, if you have any commentary on that specific resolution or even just this idea of, you know, this for this sex trafficking network to exist, it was not only Epstein and Maxwell who committed crimes. There's just other people who do need to be held accountable. Yeah. So any kind of thoughts on that
Yeah.
resolution or that need?
Yeah. Uh, so on the resolution, I mean, I'm grateful that National Center on Sexual Exploitation is standing behind that and behind this, because that's standing behind the survivors, you know, so
Mm,
that's what that represents. And so that's a very positive thing. And, you know, we shall see what happens, just how I felt
mhm.
after meetings, we shall see what happens. And,
Yeah.
you know, systems systems require lots of support, and so this was a whole sex trafficking operation system. uh, so to for anyone to try to claim that, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein created and maintained and perpetuated this entire system alone would obviously just be ridiculous. So there are so many people involved. Whether my personal experience with the young women that recruited me, and then to Ghislaine, and then to Jeffrey, and even within that experience. So mine's different in that it was a one-time experience, and I did not go back. However, you know, there was a driver that picked me up at the airport. There was an assistant that made all the travel arrangements for me. There was
Mhm.
somebody who made sure that I had, you know, a fruit basket and snacks and things in the hotel room, or the apartment building that I was staying in, owned by Jeffrey's brother, who was part of the system, you know.
Mm,
And so to the butlers that let me in the doors of Ghislaine Maxwell's or Jeffrey's home, to the chef that I met at Jeffrey's home. So that's just in my scope, you know,
mhm.
um, which is, I mean, if you're going to sit and compare, there are women that were with them in that system, in that dynamic for years. So
Yeah.
how many people did they come across in years when my one time, you know,
Yeah.
Maxwell and Jeffrey was on the same day, but so a few weeks span of time from the time I first was recruited to the time that I was flown back to Los Angeles, where I came from, all those people just in my personal story. So that's, you know, I'm just saying
Mhm.
all the women
Mhm.
that had year and year and year and years with these people. So many people that they're all part of the system.
Mm.
Really unbelievable to think or consider. There are so many people that knew what was going on. There were so many people that were profiting, benefiting, complicit, abusing, all of the above. You know,
Mhm.
many people involved. Yeah.
For people listening, you know, I know Teresa, we have to wrap up as your time is short. For people listening, I guess final thoughts. People who want to make a difference. Yeah, do you have any thoughts of hope or meaningful ways that they can support either survivors in their own lives or the way that people can support this issue? Any parting thoughts there?
Yes, I believe that people can reach out, you know, to their state leaders and urge
Mhm.
them urge them to action over this. That's one way
Yeah.
that they can certainly reach or support this particular uh, situation. And as far as survivors go in general, you know, so many people are survivors themselves. And if you're not, you probably know someone that is. So,
Yeah.
you know, lending an open ear is obviously beneficial. Helping them any way that's they might seek, assisting them in any type of way that they're seeking. Advocating for them if there's an opportunity to do so, encouraging them to go to law enforcement, or encouraging them if they feel that they're able to take some next steps to get their own accountability, and just to know in general that I would just hope that survivors or people going through really challenging times or trauma, I hope for them that they never feel alone, because feeling alone can be, the isolation feeling is extremely challenging, and I shame as a survivor, shame can be it's probably one of the biggest leading, I would say, feelings that you tend to have overcome you is a feeling
Mm.
of shame, and that can be extremely paralyzing in life, and unfortunately in a lot of cases it can be deadly, even because shame is so crippling. It's a one of the heaviest emotions that I've experienced as a human being.
Mhm.
um, so just to try to understand, as much as your mind's going to tell you that you're at fault somehow, or that you deserved it, or that you should have known, or that you should have said or done something differently to prevent it, that's all a lie. That's all one big lie. And if you could just try so hard not to allow that to take over, that shame to take over, so that you can get the help, because shame will keep you stuck in
Mhm.
every way for as long, years, even if it's allowed. So it's not easy, but if you could just step outside that shame and stand up for yourself, because you do have that uh, dignity,
Mhm.
then gosh, you deserve it, and people love you, and you are certainly lovable and amazing, even if bad things have happened to you. You're definitely not
Mhm.
those bad things that may have happened to you.
Mhm.
And there's help, and there's people that care. So that's what I would say to survivors.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Those are incredibly healing and powerful words to end on. Really, really appreciate your time, all that you continue to do in your work with us and the Law Center. And I know we will have you back on to discuss other topics, hopefully some lighter topics, and just reporting on victories and good news too. But thank you so much, Teresa, for all you're doing and advocating on. Please share, like, subscribe, and thank you all so much for joining us in ending sexploitation.